Retirement is often described as the finish line, but that is a misunderstanding. It may be the closing of a job title, the end of a schedule, the release from years of deadlines, but it is not the end of you. In many ways, it is the first quiet moment you've had in decades to hear your own life again. And what you hear, what you repeatedly tell yourself in that quiet, will determine what these years become. Because whether you are 35 or 75, the most powerful force shaping your life is not your circumstances. It is the direction of your thinking. You see, life has a curious law that operates whether we recognize it or not. We become what we think about, not what we wish about once in a while, not what we worry about for a day and then forget. We become what we consistently think about, what we hold in our mind, what we rehearse, what we return to when no one is listening. And after retirement, this becomes even more important, because the world is no longer giving you a ready-made identity every morning. No office, no uniform, no routine that automatically tells you who you are. Now the question becomes personal and unavoidable. What will you build inside your mind now that you have the space to build? Many people step into retirement expecting peace, and they do find it, for a little while. But soon, something else can creep in. A sense of being done, the quiet belief that the best chapters are behind them, that they've contributed all they can, that they're now living on leftovers. And if a person continues to think that way, if they let that idea sit in the mind like a permanent piece of furniture, then the body begins to follow it, the energy follows it, the choices follow it, and the personality slowly reshapes itself around that belief. Not because it was true, but because it was repeated. On the other hand, there are people who grow younger inside as they grow older outside. They seem to carry a calm confidence, a steady light in their eyes. They're not frantic, they're not trying to prove anything. Yet they are alive, interested, improving, learning, giving, creating. What is the difference? It is not luck. It is not genetics alone. It is the inner picture they hold of themselves. They have decided, consciously, that their mind will not become a storage room for regrets and fears. Their mind will be a workshop, a garden, a command center. Let me tell you something you can stake your life on. Your mind is not a passive place where thoughts just happen. It is a facility you can operate. It can run on old programs, habits of doubt, worry, and decline. Or it can run on new instructions, growth, contribution, gratitude, courage, curiosity. And the day you realize this, retirement stops being an ending and becomes a wide-open beginning. Because if you can choose what you think about, you can choose what you become. And if you can choose what you become, then you can choose the quality of your remaining years. Starting today, retirement didn't end your purpose. It removed the noise so your real purpose can finally be heard. That single idea can change the entire emotional meaning of this season of life. For many people, retirement arrives with applause on the outside and uncertainty on the inside. There may be congratulations, a farewell dinner, kind speeches, and a sense of completion. Yet later, when the house becomes quiet and the calendar suddenly looks empty, a strange question can rise up. Now, what am I for? This question isn't weakness. It's the mind searching for direction. For decades, your daily life may have been organized by external demands. Deadlines, meetings, customers, supervisors, routines, responsibilities that forced structure onto your time. Even if you didn't love every part of it, that structure gave your days a shape and gave your identity a label. When that label is removed, the silence can feel uncomfortable at first, like stepping into a room where the music has stopped and you suddenly hear your own breathing. But that silence is not a problem. It is a gift. Noise is not only sound. Noise is also busyness, pressure, expectations, and the constant need to respond. It is the endless must-do list that fills your mind before you even open your eyes in the morning. It is the habit of living in reaction mode. Retirement reduces that noise, sometimes dramatically, and when the noise fades, something powerful becomes possible. You can finally hear what has been quietly true about you all along. Purpose is not something you lose when you stop working. Purpose is not something you lose when you stop working. Purpose is something you uncover when you stop being distracted. Purpose is not a job title. A job title is a role you play in a system. Purpose is the deeper reason you wake up with a sense of meaning, the inner motive that gives energy to your thoughts, the direction that makes your days feel connected. People confuse the two because work takes so much time and attention that it feels like the center of life. But many of the most meaningful parts of a person are not contained in their profession. Your purpose may have shown itself in small ways that were never listed on a resume. The way you listened to people, the way you solved problems, the way you protected your family, the way you caused problems, the way you protected your family, the way you encouraged someone when they were close to giving up, the patience you developed, the wisdom you earned, the values you refused to abandon. Those things were not extra. Those things were you. Retirement does not delete them. It gives them room. Think about what noise does. Noise drowns out subtle signals. When a person is running all day, the inner voice becomes faint. The heart says, slow down, pay attention. There's something here, and the mind says, not now, I have too much to do. That happens for years. Many people never ask themselves what they truly want to build, who they truly want to become, and what kind of impact they want to have beyond their obligation. They may have had dreams, but those dreams were postponed, buried under obligation. Retirement, when viewed correctly, is not a door closing. It is the removal of daily interference. It's the clearing of the stage so the main character can finally speak. Real purpose is often quieter than ambition. Ambition shouts, achieve more, prove more, win more. Purpose whispers, give more, grow more, live more honestly. Ambition is hungry for applause. Purpose is satisfied with meaning. After retirement, the applause becomes less frequent. And that is not a tragedy. It is a purification. It invites you to move from external validation to internal alignment. Instead of asking, what does the world want from me? You begin to ask, what do I want to stand for now? That question is the beginning of purpose. There is another reason retirement can reveal purpose. It changes the relationship with time. When you were younger, time felt endless. You could postpone meaningful things because you assumed there would always be later. But after retirement, time becomes more precious, more visible. You begin to measure life not only by years, but by quality. You ask different questions. You start thinking about legacy, about what you leave behind in people, not just in possessions. That shift makes purpose clearer, because purpose is not primarily about comfort. It is about contribution and growth. A human being is designed to matter. When you feel you matter, you feel alive. When you feel alive, when you feel you no longer matter, you begin to shrink. Retirement is the moment to choose expansion. Retirement is the moment to choose expansion. It might be mentoring younger people in your family or community, passing on experience so they can avoid costly mistakes. It might be building health and strength so you can enjoy your years with energy rather than limitation. It might be learning something you always wanted to learn and proving to yourself that growth didn't end at 60 or 70. It might be volunteering, serving, teaching, writing, creating, speaking, supporting, building a small project that brings joy. It might be as simple and profound as becoming the steady, wise presence your family depends on. Purpose is not measured by how loud it is or how famous it becomes. Purpose is measured by how true it feels and how consistently it calls you forward. What often blocks purpose is not lack of ability, but an old belief. My best is behind me. That belief is poison because it turns retirement into decline. But retirement can be a climb, not a slide. The mind can become sharper, not duller, when it has a mission. The heart can become more open, not more closed, when it has something meaningful to give. The spirit can become stronger, not weaker, when it has a reason to get up, get dressed, and engage with life. The body itself responds to purpose. When you have a reason, you find a way. When you don't, you find excuses. This is not motivational talk. This is how human beings are wired. So the real work after retirement is not finding something to do. The real work is listening. Listening to what energizes you, what makes you feel useful, what makes you feel honest. Listening to the patterns that have always been there. The problems you love to solve, the people you naturally help, the subjects that pull your attention, the values you want to represent. Purpose is often revealed through what you care about without being paid for it. It is revealed through what you feel drawn to even when no one is watching. And once you hear it, the next step is simple but not always easy. Protect it. The noise will try to return in different forms. Endless television, mindless scrolling, complaining, fear-driven news, distractions that fill time but empty the spirit. You must guard your mind because your mind is the birthplace of purpose. Choose what you feed it. Choose what you rehearse. Choose what you rehearse. Choose what you say to yourself in the morning. Because when retirement removes the noise, it gives you a choice to drift into comfort and boredom, or to step into meaning and growth, and that choice begins with the thought that you are not finished. You are finally free to become what you were always meant to become. The mind is still the steering wheel. Thoughts quietly decide the direction of your days. This is true in youth, in midlife, and it remains true after retirement, when the outer schedule loosens and the inner world becomes even more influential. Many people imagine that once they retire, life will simply happen more pleasantly, as if freedom automatically guarantees fulfillment. But freedom only magnifies whatever is already operating inside you. When the structure of work fades, your thinking becomes the primary organizer of your time, your mood, your choices, and ultimately your identity. That is why the mind can be compared to a steering wheel. You may be sitting in a powerful vehicle with a full tank, but wherever you end up depends on what direction you keep turning the wheel, moment after moment, day after day. A steering wheel doesn't make noise. It doesn't announce itself. It simply directs. In the same way, your dominant thoughts usually do not come with fanfare. They appear as small statements you repeat to yourself. I'm getting too old for this. It's too late to start. I don't have the energy. No one needs me. This is just how life is now. Or, on the brighter side, they might sound like, I can still grow. I can improve my health. I can be useful. I can learn. I can build a better daily life. These thoughts do not remain inside the mind like harmless opinions. They become instructions. They shape what you attempt, what you avoid, how you interpret events, and how you speak to people. The day may look the same on the outside, but the inner direction changes everything. Consider how two retirees can wake up to the same morning. Both have the same amount of time. Both have the same sun in the sky. Yet one feels heavy, aimless, irritated, and bored, while the other feels calm, curious, and engaged. The difference is not the weather. It is the mental steering wheel. One person begins the day thinking in circles, rehearsing worries, regrets, or complaints. The other begins the day choosing a direction. Gratitude, purpose, learning, connection, service, health. The mind sets the tone, and the tone influences the actions, and the actions build the results. Most people don't realize that mood is often not something that happens to them. It is something their thoughts cultivate. Thoughts quietly decide what you notice. If you think my best days are gone, you will start collecting evidence for that belief. You will start collecting evidence for that belief. You will notice aches more than strengths. You will notice lost opportunities more than present possibilities. You will interpret neutral moments as proof of decline. But if you think, I can still improve, you will begin seeing options, a walk you can take, a skill you can learn, a conversation you can start, a new routine you can build. Your me and becomes like a filter. It does not show you all of reality. It shows you reality as it matches your dominant expectation. This is why controlling your thoughts is not about pretending everything is perfect. It is about refusing to hand the steering wheel to fear, bitterness, or resignation. Thoughts also decide the questions you ask, and questions decide the life you build. A person who asks, why is everything getting worse, will live in a mental world that keeps finding problems. A person who asks, what can I do today to make my life better, will begin creating solutions. The quality of your questions reveals the direction of your thinking. Retirement gives you more time with your own questions. If the questions are weak, the days become weak. If the questions are strong, the days become strong. It's important to understand that thoughts are not merely random mental clouds. You can influence them, the way a driver influences the direction of a car. You cannot control every thought that passes through your mind, just as a driver cannot control every gust of wind, but you can control which thoughts you grip and follow. You can control what you repeatedly feed yourself, what you repeatedly rehearse, what you repeatedly rehearse, what you repeatedly say out loud. Repetition creates grooves in the mind, and the mind naturally travels along the deepest grooves. If you keep thinking thoughts of limitation, your mind will keep turning that direction even when you don't intend to. If you keep thinking thoughts of growth, your mind will start turning that direction automatically as well. The steering wheel becomes easier to hold steady when the road has been traveled often. After retirement, this becomes critical, because time can either become a blessing or a burden, depending on the direction of thought. Idle time is not neutral. It tends to fill with whatever is strongest in your mind. If worry strongest, you will worry more. If gratitude is strongest, you will feel richer. If curiosity is strongest, you will explore. If bitterness is strongest, you will explore. If bitterness is strongest, you will replay old arguments. If purpose is strongest, you will build and contribute. People often fear retirement because they fear emptiness, but emptiness is not the real problem. The real problem is untrained thinking. A mind with no direction doesn't rest, it drifts. It drifts, and drift rarely takes anyone to a destination. They love. Thoughts decide your behavior in small, daily ways. Thoughts decide your behavior in small, daily ways. If you think exercise won't help me now, you won't move much. If you think even small movement matters, you will take walks, stretch, and protect your health. If you think people don't care about me, you won't reach out. If you think connection is my responsibility too, you will call a friend, attend a gathering, join a community group. The same is true with learning. If you think, I'm too old to learning, if you think, I'm too old to learn, you will stop growing. If you think, my brain can still adapt, you will read, practice, and stay mentally alive. In every case, thought chooses action. Action shapes habit, habit forms character, and character determines destiny. This is why a person can retire from work but should never retire from direction. The mind as a steering wheel also means you can correct course. A car doesn't have to keep driving the wrong way just because it started in the wrong lane. You can turn. You can slow down. You can exit and re-enter. In life, correction begins the moment you notice your inner dialogue and decide it will not run wild. Notice how you speak to yourself when you wake up. Notice the story you repeat about your age. Notice how you describe your future. Notice what you assume is possible. Those assumptions are not harmless. They are directions. One of the most practical disciplines in retirement is to choose a thought diary. Secursion before the day chooses it for you. Decide what kind of person you intend to be today. Decide what you will focus on. Decide what you will feed your mind with. Uplifting words, meaningful goals, healthy routines, and conversations that expand rather than shrink you. When you do this consistently, you are no longer a passenger in your own life. You are the driver. And the remarkable thing is that the destination begins to change not because the world suddenly becomes perfect, but because your mind stops pointing you toward the same old dead ends and starts guiding you toward a life that feels deliberate, a life that feels deliberate, alive, and worthy of your time. And your days begin to follow the direction you choose. Inside your own mind, what you consistently hold in your mind becomes your habits, your health choices, your relationships, your identity. This is not poetry. It is the practical mechanics of a human life. The mind is not a storage room where thoughts sit harmlessly like old boxes. The mind is a factory. It produces decisions, and decisions produce behavior, and behavior produces results. And decisions produce behavior, and behavior produces results. A person doesn't wake up one morning and suddenly become confident, bitter, healthy, lonely, energized, or defeated. They become those things gradually by repeatedly thinking in the same direction until that direction hardens into routine. The thoughts you return to, especially when you are alone, tired, or uncertain, are the thoughts that shape you. Start with habits because habits are simply repeated actions that have become automatic. But behind every habit is a belief, and behind every belief is a belief, and behind every belief is a thought that was rehearsed enough to feel true. If a person repeatedly thinks it won't matter if I skip this, they will skip it. Whether it is exercise, healthy food, reading, reaching out, or working on a personal goal. If a person repeatedly thinks small steps matter, they will take small steps consistently, and those steps will compound. The difference between a strong habit and a weak habit is often not willpower. It is the thought pattern feeding it. When the thought changes, the habit becomes easier to build. When the thought stays the same, the habit remains a struggle. That's why people fail at change, when they try to force new behavior without updating the inner script. The mind must be trained first, because the mind must be trained first, because the mind writes the instructions, the body follows. Now, look at health choices. Your health is shaped by thousands of small decisions: what you eat, how much you move, whether you sleep, how you manage stress, whether you attend checkups, whether you take your symptoms seriously, whether you treat your body as something worth caring for. And those decisions rarely come from logic alone. They come from identity. If you think of yourself as someone who is declining, you will make choices that match decline. You will accept fatigue as normal, stiffness as permanent, poor sleep as unavoidable. You will say things like, "At my age, what can you expect?" That thought sounds harmless, even realistic, but it quietly gives you permission to stop trying. On the other hand, if you consistently think, "My body responds to care," you will make different choices. You will still be realistic about limitations, but you will refuse surrender. You will walk when you can, strengthen what you can, nourish what you can, protect your brain and heart, because you believe you are still in the business of living well. The body listens to the mind's expectations more than most people understand, even when genetics and age play a role. The daily direction of thought often decides whether you fight for your health or drift away from it. Then there are relationships. Many people assume relationships are mostly about other people, but the truth is, relationships are heavily shaped by what you consistently think about people, about yourself, and about life. If you repeatedly think, "People can't be trusted," you will approach others with suspicion, and your tone will push them away, even if you never say those words out loud. If you repeatedly think, "No one cares," you will stop reaching out, and then the lack of connection will become proof that you were right. If you repeatedly think, "I am a burden," you will withdraw, and others will sense that distance and closeness will fade. But if you repeatedly think, "Connection is built," you will keep showing up. You will call, visit, listen, forgive, soften, and you will create warmth around you. Thoughts shape the way you interpret someone's silence, someone's tone, someone's mistake. They shape whether you assume the best or the worst. And because relationships are sensitive, your assumptions become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The mind sets the atmosphere before a word is spoken. Your identity is the deepest layer of all, because identity is the story you tell yourself about who you are. That story is made of repeated thoughts. You are not only what happened to you, you are what you decided those events meant. If you consistently think, "I'm not the kind of person who can change," you will protect that identity by avoiding anything that challenges it. You will rationalize staying the same. You will call it being realistic, but it is often fear dressed in sensible clothing. If you consistently think, "I am still growing," you will behave like a learner, even if you're nervous, even if you're starting late. Identity is not fixed, it is reinforced. Whatever you repeatedly think about yourself becomes your emotional home, and you will decorate that home with matching habits, matching friendships, matching routines, matching outcomes. This is especially important after retiring. And because the old identity that came from a job title, a rank, a position, a routine, begins to fade. And when that external identity fades, your internal identity fades. Your internal identity becomes louder. If you do not choose your identity, the mind will default to the easiest labels. I'm old, I'm finished, I'm irrelevant, I'm just passing time. Those labels become a mental uniform you wear every day, and then you start living as if they are facts. But if you choose intentionally, you can build an identity that fits your best self. I am a person of wisdom. I am a person of wisdom. I am a person of discipline. I am a person who contributes. I am a person who stays curious. I am a person who brings peace into rooms. I am a person who still sets goals. When you think these thoughts consistently, you begin to act in alignment with them, and alignment creates confidence. Consistency is the key word here. A single good thought is a spark. Consistent thought is a flame. Most people do not suffer from a lack of inspiration. They suffer from a lack of repetition in the right direction. They get motivated for an hour, then return to the same mental habits for the next 23. The mind follows what it hears most. That is why what you feed your mind daily matters more than what you feed it occasionally. If you flood your mind with fear-based content, angry conversations, negative news loops, and regret-filled memories, your identity will slowly bend in that direction. If you feed your mind with uplifting ideas, useful learning, hopeful plans, and reminders of what you can still do, your identity will expand. And notice how quietly this process happens. No alarm goes off when your thinking starts to shape your life. It feels normal because it is inside you, yet the outcomes appear outside you. Weight gained or lost, energy rising or falling, relationship as warming or cooling, confidence growing or shrinking. People often think life changed first, and then they changed. But more often, their inner rehearsal changed first, and then life followed. Your thoughts are not just private entertainment. They are practice. Whatever you practice inwardly becomes your default outwardly. So the most valuable skill you can develop is not simply positive thinking, but disciplined thinking, choosing what is true, what is useful, what is empowering, and returning to it again and again until it becomes the mental posture you live from. Because in the end, you will not rise to the level of your occasional hopes, you will settle to the level of your consistent thoughts. Most people don't drift into a better life, they drift into whatever they think about most. And that single truth explains why so many well-intended plans never become reality. Drift is not a dramatic decision. It is not a loud choice. Drift is what happens when a person stops directing their mind and begins living by default. It is the silent movement of a life guided by whatever thoughts are most familiar, most repeated, and most emotionally charged. And the frightening part is that drift feels normal while it is happening. No one wakes up and announces, "Today I will drift into regret." They simply stop choosing, and then the mind chooses for them, day after day. Improvement is not the natural result of time passing. Time passes for everyone. Yet some people grow wiser, healthier, calmer, more fulfilled, and more purposeful, while others grow more bitter, more tired, more anxious, and more isolated. The difference is rarely intelligence and almost never luck alone. The difference is direction, and direction begins in the mind. If your mind is not aimed, it will wander toward the easiest targets: worry, complaint, nostalgia, fear, distract, action, or comfort without meaning. Those are the default settings of an undisciplined mind, especially when life becomes quieter, such as after retirement. Drift happens because the mind loves familiarity. Familiar thoughts feel safe even when they are harmful. A person can become attached to worrying because it feels like being prepared. They can become attached to complaining because it feels like being honest. They can become attached to replaying the past because it feels like remembering who they were. They can become attached to scrolling and entertainment because it feels like relaxing. But comfort is not the same as growth. And familiarity is not the same as growth. And familiarity is not the same as truth. When the mind repeatedly returns to a thought, it builds a mental groove, and soon the mind slides into that groove automatically. This is drift. It is not that the person chose a bad destination, it is that they stopped choosing any destination at all. If you want proof, look at how easily the average day can be filled without producing anything meaningful. You can wake up, check your phone, read headlines that stir fear, watch videos that entertain but leave you empty, talk about problems without solving them, snack without hunger, sit without moving, postpone without planning, and suddenly the day is gone. Then the next day arrives, and because nothing was deliberately chosen, the same pattern repeats. Weeks pass, months pass, and one morning a person realizes, with a quiet shock, that time has been spent, but life has not been built. That is drift, and drift is powered by whatever you think about most. Because what you think about most, because what you think about most, because what you do most. Now notice the dangerous illusion. Drift feels like freedom, especially after retirement. Freedom can be misunderstood as no schedule, no pressure, no demands. But real freedom is not the absence of structure. Real freedom is not the absence of structure. Real freedom is the ability to direct yourself. Without self-direction, freedom becomes wandering, and wandering becomes dissatisfaction. A person may say, "I am free now," yet feels strangely restless, irritable, or empty. Why? Because the mind was designed to aim at something meaningful. When it has no aim, it will aim at noise. It will aim at noise. It will aim at trivialities. It will aim at fears. And then life will begin to reflect that aim. Most people do not drift upward because upward drift requires forces that are not naturally present. Think of a balloon. It rises because something lighter than air is inside it. In human terms, the lighter-than-air force is a chosen vision, a chosen attitude, a chosen purpose, a chosen discipline. Without these, gravity wins. Gravity is the pull of habits, comfort, laziness, negativity, and environment. Gravity is the default. If you do not add intention, you will not rise. You may not crash dramatically, but you will settle. The life you live 5 years from now is being built right now by what you repeatedly think about, and therefore repeatedly do. This is why people who improve after retirement are often the people who keep a mental target. They decide what matters now. They decide what matters now. They decide what kind of health they want. They decide what kind of relationships they want. They decide what kind of legacy they want. Then they begin to think in alignment with that decision. They don't wait to feel like it. They don't drift toward a better routine. They build one. They don't drift into meaningful friendships. They invest in them. They don't drift into physical strength. They practice it. Their lives are not perfect, but they are directed, and direction beats drift every time. On the other hand, a person who repeatedly thinks about decline will drift into decline. If you keep thinking about your aches, you will move less. If you keep thinking about your aches, you will move less. If you keep thinking about what you can't do, you will attempt less. If you keep thinking about what's wrong with the world, you will feel heavier. If you keep thinking about how people disappointed you, you will withdraw. If you keep thinking about how people disappointed you, you will withdraw. If you keep thinking about the past with bitterness, you will poison the present. None of this requires a decision. It only requires repetition. And repetition is exactly what drift provides. Because drift is a system of automatic repetition, the mind becomes what it consumes. If your mental diet is fear and outrage, your emotional life will be fear and outrage. If your mental diet is hopeless stories, your expectations will shrink. If your mental diet is gossip and negativity, your relationships will lose warmth. But if your mental diet is wisdom, gratitude, and purposeful ideas, your mind will start to search for opportunities instead of problems. This is not denial of reality. It is selection of focus. Reality is too large to hold entirely in your mind, so your focus becomes your experience. That is why drifting into whatever you think about most is so powerful. It determines what reality you live in emotionally, even if the external facts are the same. So the practical question becomes simple and unavoidable. What do you think about most, especially when you are alone, especially when no one is guiding your attention? That is the direction you are traveling. The mind is like a compass. If it points toward fear, your choices will orient around safety and avoidance. If it points toward meaning, your choices will orient around growth and contribution. If it points toward comfort, your choices will orient around ease and pleasure, and later you may pay the price with boredom and regret. The compass does not lie. It shows the direction you are truly headed, not the direction you claim to want. If you want a better life, you must interrupt drift with deliberate thinking. Deliberate thinking is not simply repeating cheerful phrases. It is choosing a target and returning to it daily. It is deciding what kind of person you are becoming and then feeding the mind what supports that identity. It is planning your day on purpose, even if the plan is simple. A walk, a call, a learning session, a small project, a service action, a quiet reflection. These actions seem small, but they are not small because they are directional. They move the mind from default to design. And once you begin designing your thinking, you will notice something remarkable. Your days stop slipping through your fingers. Time begins to feel richer. Time begins to feel richer. You feel less like a passenger and more like a participant. You stop measuring life only by years and start measuring it by meaning. You don't need grand goals to escape drift. You need clear direction, because people rarely end up somewhere wonderful by accident. They end up where their mind has been pointing all along, and the mind points wherever it is repeatedly placed, which means you can change your destination by changing what you think about most, starting now and continuing tomorrow, and the day after, Until the drift is replaced by direction and your life begins to reflect the thoughts you chose to live by, rather than the thoughts you happened to fall into. Age doesn't weaken the power of thought. If anything, it makes it more important because time becomes more important, because time becomes more valuable. When people talk about aging, they often speak as if the mind slowly loses influence and life becomes primarily physical. More aches, less speed, fewer options. But that view misses something essential. The older you become, the more your inner world matters, because the inner world becomes the lens through which you experience everything else. Two people can have similar bodies, similar limitations, and similar circumstances, yet live in completely different emotional realities. One lives with peace and purpose, the other with anxiety and resignation. The difference is not simply their age. It is the direction and discipline of their thinking. In fact, many younger people can get away with careless thinking for a while, because youth provides momentum. There is energy to burn, time to waste, and the future feels wide open. A young person might spend years in negativity or distraction and still bounce back, because life is constantly presenting new doors. But later in life, the cost of careless thinking becomes higher, not because older people are weak, but because time is precious. Each day carries more weight. Each habit compounds faster in the sense that there are fewer years to undo what has been repeated. That does not mean change is impossible. It means change is urgent, meaningful, and worth your attention. When you understand that time is valuable, you begin to treat your mind like a guardian of that time. A person who wastes hours in worry, bitterness, or meaningless distraction is not simply wasting time. They are spending the remaining chapters of their life on thoughts that do not give a return. That is a sobering idea, but it is also empowering, because it reveals something you can control. You may not control how many years you have, but you can control the quality of your days, and the quality of your days is largely determined by what happens in your mind. As people age, certain mental patterns can become more entrenched, like paths that have been walked for decades. If someone has practiced worry for 40 years, the mind will naturally worry. If someone has practiced criticism, the mind will naturally criticize. If someone has practiced self-doubt, the mind will naturally hesitate. That's why the power of thought becomes more important with age, because the mind's habits are stronger and the consequences are clear. But here's the hopeful truth. The same principle that made those patterns strong can also make new patterns strong. The mind learns through repetition. If you choose new thoughts and repeat them, the brain can form new pathways. People sometimes underestimate their ability to change later in life, but the human mind remains adaptable. It may take patience, but it is possible, and it is worth it. Thought becomes more important with age because thought influences health in profound ways. Stress, for example, is not just an emotion. It is a physiological state. Chronic stress changes sleep, digestion, blood pressure, immune function, and even memory. Many older adults think they are just stressed because of life, but often the deeper issue is that the mind has become a habit of rehearsing fear. The mind keeps returning to worst-case scenarios, to regret, to resentment, to insecurity, and the body pays the price. On the other hand, when the mind is trained toward calm and meaning, when it repeatedly rehearses gratitude, acceptance, and purposeful action, the body often responds with improved energy and resilience. Thought does not replace medical care, but it can either support healing or sabotage it. Thought also becomes more important with age because of identity. After retirement, after children grow, after roles shift, people can lose the identity that once gave them direction. If the mind interprets that shift as loss, the person begins to shrink. They may stop learning, stop socializing, stop caring for themselves, and slowly their world becomes smaller. But if the mind interprets the shift as freedom and opportunity, the person expands. They become a learner again. They become a mentor. They become a builder of new routines and new relationships. The same external change produces different outcomes depending on the internal narrative. And that narrative is made of thoughts, quiet, repeated, accepted thoughts. Time being valuable also changes what matters emotionally. When you are younger, you might tolerate toxic relationships, pointless arguments, and ego battles because you feel you have time. Later, You realize that peace is worth more than winning. You realize that forgiveness is not something you do for others. It is something you do to reclaim your own life. You realize that bitterness is a thief that steals days you can't get back. These realizations are not automatic with age. They are the result of thinking clearly. They are the result of choosing what to focus on. Age can bring wisdom, but wisdom is not guaranteed. Wisdom comes from reflective thought, from learning, from honesty, from the courage to change your mind. Another reason thought becomes more important is because your influence often increases in quieter ways. Older adults carry stories, experience, lessons learned the hard way. Whether that experience becomes a blessing to others depends on the quality of your thinking. If your mind becomes cynical, you may pass on cynicism. If your mind becomes hopeful and grounded, you pass on strength. Family members, younger co-workers, neighbors, and even strangers often look to older people for a sense of perspective. They may not say it out loud, but they watch how you respond to challenges. They watch your emotional tone. They learn from your example. Your thinking shapes the atmosphere you create around you, and that atmosphere is a form of legacy. Time being valuable also means that procrastination becomes more costly. Many people reach later life with a list of things they wanted to do. Write, travel, fix relationships, strengthen their health, learn a skill, start a small business, volunteer, serve, create. The mind can either say it's too late or it can say it's time. The first thought shuts. That. Door. The second thought opens it. One thought leads to regret, the other leads to engagement. And the truth is, engagement. And the truth is, engagement is often the fountain of youth that people are looking for. Not youth in appearance, but youth in spirit. A person who is engaged in meaningful goals carries a different energy. Their days have a pulse. Their mind has a reason to stay awake. The older you get, the less you can afford to let random thoughts run your life. A mind without discipline will replay old wounds, magnify fears, and waste precious hours. But a disciplined mind will choose peace, choose growth, choose contribution, choose gratitude, choose movement, choose learning, choose connection. Discipline here is not harshness, it is guardianship. It is protecting your remaining time from being stolen by mental habits that no longer serve you. So age does not weaken the power of thought, it magnifies it. Because now, every thought is not just a thought. It is a vote for the kind of life you are living in your remaining years. Every repeated thought becomes a habit. Every habit becomes a lifestyle. Every lifestyle becomes your experience of aging. And when you realize this, you stop thinking of your mind as something that merely reacts. You start treating it as your most valuable tool, because it can turn ordinary days into meaningful days, and meaningful days into a meaningful days, into a meaningful days, and a meaningful days, into a meaningful days, into a meaningful days, into a meaningful days, and meaningful days, and a meaningful life into a legacy that continues in the people you touch long after the calendar has moved on, and your name is spoken in a softer voice, but your influence remains alive in the attitudes you helped shape, and the courage you helped awaken in others, and the peace you chose to cultivate in your own heart as your years became fewer, but your wisdom became deeper, and your purpose became clearer, and your time became priceless. You can't control everything that happens, but you control what? You choose to rehearse in your mind, and this is one of the most liberating truths a person can learn, especially in the later chapters of life. Many people spend years fighting reality, arguing with the past, or resenting circumstances they cannot change. They replay conversations, they relive mistakes, they worry about what might happen, and in doing so, they suffer twice, once from the event itself and again from the mental rehearsal. The event may have lasted a moment, an hour, or a season, but the rehearsal can last for years. And the tragedy is that the rehearsal can last for years. And the tragedy is that the rehearsal feels like thinking, when in fact it is often only repetition without progress. Life will always contain variables you do not control. Health can change. People can disappoint you. Plans can fall apart. Markets shift. Families go through seasons. Means go through seasons. A body that once felt strong may suddenly feel slower. And yet, within all of that uncertainty, you possess a power that most people ignore. The ability to choose what you focus on and what you practice inwardly. The ability to choose what you focus on and what you practice inwardly. Your mind is like a stage, and you are the director. You may not control which actors knock on the door, but you can decide who gets the leading role and who gets escorted off stage. To rehearse something in the mind means you run it again and again as if preparing for a performance. This is exactly what people do with worry. They rehearse worst-case scenarios. They picture trouble. They imagine loss. They create arguments in their head. They practice fear so frequently. The fear becomes their default emotional posture. Then, when something small goes wrong, the mind already has a full script of panic ready to perform. Worry is often mistaken for responsibility, but in reality, worry is mental rehearsal of outcomes you don't want. Without any productive action attached, it consumes energy that could be used to improve your life, strengthen your relationships, and protect your health. Rehearsal also happens with regret. A person can replay the same memory so many times that it becomes a permanent resident in the mind. They remember what they should have said, what they should have done, what they wish had happened differently. But the past cannot be edited by mental repetition. Rehearsing regret doesn't change history. It only changes your present. It steals today's peace by forcing today to pay a debt for yesterday. A wise person learns to extract the lesson from the past, take the correction, and then stop paying interest on the same mistake. You honor your life not by punishing yourself endlessly, but by learning and then moving forward with more wisdom. Another form of rehearsal is resentment. Resentment is the mind's habit of revisiting an injustice, as if the act of replaying it will finally deliver fairness. But resentment rarely punishes the person who hurt you. It punishes you. It tightens the chest, hardens the face, drains joy, and turns the mind into a courtroom that never closes. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not letting someone get away with it. Forgiveness is refusing to give your mind stage to a painful scene every day. It is saying, "This happened, it mattered, I learned something, but I will not live there anymore." This is control. This is strength. It is mental discipline. The reason this keynote matters so much after retirement is that you often have more unscheduled time, and unscheduled time can become rehearsal time. If the mind is undisciplined, it will fill quiet moments with old stories, worries, complaints, or fears. But if the mind is trained, quiet moments become healing moments. You can turn a walk into a practice of gratitude. You can turn a morning coffee into a moment of reflection. You can turn an evening into a review of what went right rather than only what went wrong. The mind always rehearses something. The question is whether you will choose it. Now, controlling what you rehearse does not mean denying reality. It does not mean pretending you are not hurting or refusing to face problems. It means being deliberate about what you repeat. Facing a problem once with clarity can be useful. Rehearsing it endlessly with emotion is destructive. Productive thinking asks, "What can I do? What is the next step? What is within my power?" Unproductive rehearsal asks, "Why me? What if everything goes wrong? How unfair is this?" The first creates action. The second creates paralysis. A practical way to apply this is to separate what you can control from what you cannot. You cannot control your age, but you can control your age, but you can control your attitude about aging. You cannot control what someone did in the past, but you can control whether you keep letting it poison your present. You cannot control every health challenge, but you can control many of your daily choices. Food, movement, sleep habits, stress management, medical follow-through, and social connection. You cannot control how others respond to you, but you can control how you show up. Your kindness, your firmness, your honesty, your boundaries. When you focus on control, the mind gains stability. When you focus on uncontrollable variables, the mind becomes anxious and scattered. Controlling rehearsal also means choosing what you feed your mind. The mind rehearses what it consumes. If you spend hours every day with anger-driven news and fearful predictions, your mind will rehearse anger and fear. If you spend hours with meaningless entertainment, your mind will rehearse emptiness and distraction. But if you feed your mind with wisdom, uplifting words, meaningful conversations, and learning that builds you, your mind will naturally rehearse better material. In that sense, your attention is like a budget. Spend it wisely because you are buying your emotional life with it. There is also a deeper spiritual component. Your mind becomes a home you live in. If you let it be filled with rehearsals of pain, you will live in a painful home even if the outside world is calm. But if you train your mind to rehearse peace, courage, gratitude, and purpose, you will live in a stronger home even if the outside world is unstable. This is why some people seem calm in storms. They have practiced calm, and why others panic in small inconveniences. They have practiced panic. Practice is rehearsal. Rehearsal becomes reflex. One of the most effective habits you can build is a daily rehearsal of the person you want to be. Not a fantasy life, but a character rehearsal. Rehearse patience before you enter a difficult conversation. Rehearse gratitude before you start your day. Rehearse courage before you face a medical appointment. Rehearse kindness before you visit family. Rehearse confidence before you try something new. When you do this, you are not hoping your emotions cooperate. You are training your mind to lead. So yes, you can't control everything that happens, but you can control what you give mental stage time to. You can choose whether your mind becomes a museum of old pain or a workshop for a better future. You can choose whether your inner life becomes a rehearsal hall for fear or a rehearsal hall for strength. And once you grasp that, you stop being helpless in the face of circumstances, because even when the outer world is uncertain, you can still create inner order, and inner order becomes the foundation for better choices, better health, better relationships, and a life that feels guided rather than haunted by what you cannot change. And every day you practice this, you become more skilled at it, until your mind naturally returns to what is useful, what is true, what is peaceful, what is purposeful, what is within your control, what is within your control, and what helps you live these years with dignity and calm and courage and meaning, rather than being dragged around by thoughts that repeat themselves like a broken record that no longer deserves a place in your life, but only continues because you never took your hand and gently lifted the needle and set it down on a better song that you chose on purpose and kept choosing again and again until it became the new music of your days. A simple daily discipline, selecting one noble thought, can rebuild confidence, meaning, and joy after retirement, because the mind does not change through occasional inspiration, but through consistent direction. When people hear the word discipline, they often imagine something harsh, exhausting, or complicated. They picture strict schedules, extreme routines, and a life that feels like work all over again. But the discipline in this idea is gentle and powerful. Choose one noble thought each day and live from it. Not 10 thoughts, not a long list. 1. Something clean, uplifting, honest, and high. Something that pulls you upward rather than dragging you down. Over time, this simple practice can reshape your inner life the way a small rudder can turn a large ship. Retirement can be a beautiful season, but it can also be emotionally confusing. The world changes the way it treats you. People may assume you're resting now as if your growth is finished. The structure that once measured your value, paychecks, job titles, performance reviews, falls away. And without realizing it, a person can begin measuring themselves by what they no longer do, rather than by who they still are. That is how confidence quietly drains. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is not arrogance. Confidence is the steady sense that you can still handle life, still learn, still contribute, still matter. After retirement, confidence often needs a new foundation, and that foundation is built from the inside outward. A noble thought is not just positive thinking, it is a thought that has dignity. It is rooted in values. It's a thought you would be proud to live by. For example, I will be useful today. I will be calm and kind today. I will be calm and kind today. I will improve my health today. I will forgive and free my mind today. I will be grateful today. I will bring peace into my home today. These thoughts are noble because they lift your character. They shift attention from fear to purpose, from regret to growth, from regret to growth, from passivity to participation. They don't require perfect circumstances. They require only choice. The reason selecting one thought works is because it creates focus. The mind is scattered when it tries to carry everything at once. Without focus, the mind defaults to noise, worries, distractions, old stories, irritations. But when you select one noble thought, you give your mind a center. You give it a lens. You give it a theme that can organize your day. Like a compass, it helps you make small decisions in alignment with something meaningful. If the thought is, I will be useful today, you'll ask, how can I help? You might call someone, mentor someone, clean something, fix something, volunteer, encourage a family member, share wisdom, or simply show up with a better attitude. If the thought is, I will improve my health today, you'll take a walk, drink water, choose better food, stretch, sleep earlier, and protect your mind from stress. If the thought is, I will be grateful today, you'll notice blessings you normally ignore, and gratitude will soften your mood and reshape your interactions. This practice rebuilds confidence because confidence grows when you keep promises to yourself. Many people lose confidence, not because they lack ability, but because they have a long history of abandoning themselves. They say they will do something. Then they don't. They say they'll change. Then they drift back. Over time, the subconscious begins to believe, I can't count on me. That belief creates hesitation, sadness, and self-doubt. Selecting one noble thought each day is a manageable promise. It is small enough to keep, and when you keep it day after day, you rebuild trust with yourself. Trust with yourself becomes confidence. Confidence becomes momentum. It rebuilds meaning because meaning is not found by chasing pleasure. Meaning is found by living in alignment with values. Retirement gives you more freedom, but freedom without values can become emptiness. Days can become filled with comfort, yet feel strangely hollow. A noble thought brings values back to the center. It reminds you that life is still about who you are becoming. It shifts the question from how do I fill time to how do I live well. When you live from a noble thought, your actions become meaningful even if they are ordinary. Washing dishes can become an act of service. A walk can become an act of self-respect. A conversation can become an act of love. Meaning is created by the spirit you bring, not just the activity you do. It rebuilds joy because joy often follows right thinking. Not shallow happiness, but a deeper satisfaction. Joy grows when you are present, grateful, connected, purposeful, and at peace with yourself. Many people believe joy is something that arrives when problems disappear. But problems rarely disappear entirely. Joy is often the result of inner order. When you choose a noble thought, you are creating inner order. You're not letting your mind be dragged by every fear, memory, headline, or complaint. You are directing it, and direction produces peace, and peace creates space for joy. The key is consistency. One day of noble thinking helps. 10 days begins to shift mood. 30 days can change a life. 90 days can change a life. The mind learns through repetition. What you practice becomes your default. If you practice noble thoughts, your mind begins to return to higher ground naturally. It becomes easier to resist bitterness. It becomes easier to interrupt worry. It becomes easier to choose action over procrastination. The practice strengthens you internally, and internal strength changes the entire experience of retirement. This discipline also simplifies life. Many people overwhelm themselves with big plans, new diets, new schedules, new goals, new projects, all at once. Then they fail and feel worse. But one noble thought is sustainable. It is a thread you can hold even on hard days. Even if you're tired, even if you're hurting, even if you're discouraged, you can still choose one thought like, I will be gentle with myself today, or I will take one small step today. The power of the practice is not intensity, it is steadiness. Steadiness wins. Selecting one noble thought each morning also builds a kind of mental immunity. The world will still bring challenges, but you won't be as easily knocked off course. When something irritating happens, you return to your thought. When you feel tempted to waste the day, you return to your thought. When you feel lonely, you return to your thought and ask what action matches it. The thought becomes an anchor. It steadies you, and from that steadiness you can build a day that feels purposeful. Over time, people will notice the change, not because you will announce it, but because your tone will shift, your patience will increase, your energy will improve, your confidence will become quieter and stronger. Your life will begin to look less like someone waiting for time to pass, and more like someone living. This is the hidden power of a simple daily discipline. This is the hidden power of a simple daily discipline. It turns retirement from an ending into a new chapter of intentional becoming, because every day you wake up and choose one noble thought, you are choosing the person you are becoming. And the person you are becoming will shape your habits, your health, your relationships, and your legacy, and the days will start to feel connected again, like they belong to a life that still has direction and dignity, and usefulness, and hope. And the quiet that once felt empty will begin to feel like peace, and the future that once felt uncertain will begin to feel like an open path, and you will walk that path. And you will walk that path one thought at a time, one day at a time, until the noble thought is no longer something you choose with effort, but something your mind returns to naturally because. It has become the new language of your inner world and the new foundation of your joy and confidence and meaning as these years continue forward with purpose and calm and strength and a grateful heart that knows it is still here to grow and give and live fully.